Pizza. Everyone loves pizza, but what really makes the pizza is the dough. My name's Kyanne Hawkins, and I'm here with my husband, David.
Hey.
And today we're going to be talking about pizza, and especially about dough, and kind of the evolution of dough throughout history, and the evolution of dough throughout our lives as well. I just wanted to kind of start off about the evolution of dough throughout history, throughout different regions, that they each come up with this flatbread in a sense. They take the grains from their area, the local grains from their area, mix it with some water, and make it into this batter and cook it, and it's like a flatbread.
And the grains weren't really even specific, like, they'd have barley or wheat or, corn, right? They take these things and dough it, by adding water to it and get the right proportions. And you have this lump of dough that you could mold and shape, right?
Yeah, and then, cook it, put it in an oven, on the fire, cook it up. And it's essentially what we would consider as a flatbread. It would...
Something that's unleavened, it doesn't have yeast in it, it hasn't had a chance to rise.
Popular ones now is pita, the pita bread that we, still eat today on many different occasions. There's other breads that appeared in Africa, in Asia, in ancient America that were all essentially the origins of flatbread. But where the origin of pizza really came to be was in Italy. Mm-hmm. And in 600 BC, when people would go to work, they would bring these flatbreads with them, and then whatever the local vendor was selling, whether it be produce, it be meat, it be, whatever they could find, they would put it on these flatbreads and essentially have the meal. And that's kind of the first idea of pizza.
Having some bread that you could throw other stuff on top of. Making the bread taste better, because they didn't have too many things like salt or sugar, or not enough to really sweeten the bread, and so it was kind of bland. Nowadays, if you think about some of those flatbreads, if you were to eat flatbread alone, it's not very desirable.
Well, and that flatbread, we know, eventually became focaccia bread, which essentially was that flatbread. You put some olive oil on it, then you put different seasonings on to make it, again, taste better and taste good. That was a very popular dish for the time. And again, that kept on evolving until it was in the 1800s that there was a guy named Rafael Esposito. Mm-hmm. And he's actually the one that we credit to be the inventor who popularized pizza, especially the margarita pizza. So he was a cook, and the Queen Margarita was coming to visit his town, and he wanted to make something special for her. And so he thought of the idea, well, let's take this flatbread, in a sense, it was a peasant food, which was a little outrageous to serve to a queen, but he had the idea, let's take this flatbread and incorporate the Italian flag colors. So he took the flatbread, he put some tomatoes for the red, he put some mozzarella for the white, and basil for the green of the flag. And, put it on that flatbread, and it became pizza. It became what we know as the margarita pizza that, you can go down to in most any pizza shop and you can order this margarita pizza today. That's the evolution of pizza. It started off from these flatbreads that were using any grain that they possibly could have, to putting different toppings, putting, vegetables, putting sauce, putting cheese, putting whatever produce you have lying around, and making it into what we now know as pizza. So, like I mentioned before, we wanted to talk a little bit about the evolution of dough within our own lives and the evolution of pizza within us, within our family, within who we are. which really kind of starts within our recipe, the recipe that we use on a weekly basis because we do make pizza like weekly.
Yeah, yeah. And the recipe's fairly simple. It's just like many other doughs out there. But you start off with the yeast and activating it, throwing in the sugar and some warm water to help get it activated, and just getting it a little agitated so it can start to react. And then we add all the water in after that.
Well, we added in the warm water.
Yeah,
before.
The warm water first. Let it sit for a few seconds just so the yeast has time. And then you throw in the rest of the water, which I like to keep it warm. You can go cold, you can go hot.
You don't want too cold.
Yeah, it's better to keep it warm or lukewarm instead of cold.
Even room temperature.
Yeah. And with that, and then you go ahead and you get the flour, and you really put the flour in. And the important part is getting the ratio of flour. It isn't how much you put in, it's the ratio between water and flour. And so when you blend everything up and you mix it all together, you kind of want a consistency where it's a little bit sticky, but it doesn't stick to your hands.
You don't want to be kneading the dough and it just like is this glob of like glue on your hands.
Yeah. You want it just enough. And a lot of people, some people put oil on their hands. I put flour on my hands just because I like the dry feeling better. But after you mix it up, and you could mix it by hand. We use a mixer. We use a dough mixer. But you could mix it by hand. But afterwards, I still try to knead it a little bit by hand. That way, any bits and pieces that aren't quite clumped together, I'm working it out just by hand. And then after the dough is pretty much set, you don't need it to rise because this is, again, like it's supposed to be a flat kind of bread, and there is going to be a little bit of rising as you're putting the toppings on. And usually for most pizzas, that's all that you really need. It doesn't need a whole lot more. So we use a rolling pin to help kind of get us started. We'll roll it out into about, I don't know, what would you say, 1/8 of an inch?
Yeah, I mean, we get it as thin as we want it to be. We like ours a little bit thinner, our crust a little bit thinner, as we like it to be more of a crunch to our crust, more of a bite, I guess you could say.
Yeah, to hear that, you hear the sound of it, like nice crisp sound to it. And so you usually do it thinner. You can do it thicker, for those people who like Chicago-style pizzas or those real thick dough pizzas, you can make it as thick and as thin as you want it to be. And whatnot. But after you have it all set out and rolled, you put it on your pizza pan. You want to put your oil or your flour. Some people do cornmeal. You want to put whatever you want on the bottom of your pan so your pizza doesn't stick. Or so it's a lot easier to pull it in and out or off and whatnot. So you got to prep your pan, and then as you put your dough on, now it's pretty much ready to kind of be shaped into a circle. Most pizzas are in that circle shape. Yes, you could do a square pizza if you really wanted to, but it would still expand, and it would be bold, like bubble lettering. But you start with putting the sauce on, the tomato sauce.
And we like to use, for our tomato sauce, we just get a can of simple tomato sauce because we end up seasoning the sauce how we like it. We'd rather have that than buy, like ragu or those already made pre-seasoned sauces.
Yeah, and you could even go even further of doing it from scratch by getting tomatoes and making your own tomato sauce. It's a little bit more expensive and whatnot, but if you're a person who really can afford the freshness and can make it happen, and it'd probably be a little bit better for you. Less preservatives in it for sure.
And then once we have the sauce on, what we like to do next is we put on our different seasonings. We usually use a little bit of garlic salt. Again, you don't want to use too much of any of the seasonings because you want it to taste nice. Good.
Yeah, you want it nice and even. You don't want like a big glob of garlic in one corner and none in the other.
And then a big bite of basil or...
Yeah, and so you want it, the key point of it is to spread it nice and even across the whole surface of the sauce. Some people like it on the dough outside, but we kind of keep it to the sauce on the inside.
And so
we do the garlic salt, and then we put on it's an Italian blend, right? Which is essentially all that it means is that it's got oregano, basil, rosemary, some sage in there, and
Does it have fennel?
no, it doesn't have it doesn't have fennel in it. But so it's pretty much those 4 seasonings. If you don't like any of those seasonings, like I'm not a huge fan of sage, but I can stand the taste of it. But if you don't like any of those seasonings, or you have an allergy or something just doesn't quite taste right, you can always use those other individual seasonings, and you just got to make sure it's spread it thinly on there.
And then we also put on some Parmesan cheese. We just do we have the grated Parmesan cheese.
Like super. It's like super granular. It's shelf stable until you open it, and then you have to refrigerate it.
So we just sprinkle, or we actually put a bit more than a sprinkle, but we coat the sauce.
It's evenly distributed. That's the thing. It's like it's evenly covered, and so it kind of you can still see the sauce underneath it, but it's covering the whole pizza. And then after that, some people, like my mom, she doesn't like their toppings on top of her pizza. She puts it under. So my mom she'll put the pepperonis right on top of the sauce and the Parmesan cheese, and then she'll put her cheese on top. We like to put our cheese on first.
And again, we what we use for our cheese is we use a blend of cheese. It has cheddar and mozzarella and
just some provolone in there. And that's really the cheese blend. And you can put as much and as little cheese as you have money for. And we like cheese, and so we put quite a bit. We're a little cheese heavy, and the way we cook it, we also cook it to be top crispy, right? So we have a little bit of space in between the top of the pizza and the top of our oven, so it gets a nice crisper thing, and so the cheese kind of has a crunch to it.
Yeah, and so once we've gotten that cheese on, that's when we add our toppings. For this one, we're just sticking with pepperoni.
It's the traditional one. It's most people like it, and like I have a saying that I tell Kyanne is, you can always tell if a place makes really good pizza if they can make a good pepperoni pizza. No additives, nothing else. Just the pepperonis, the cheese, and the sauce. If you can tell that they have a really good one, then that's their way to tell.
Yeah, and so that's what we're sticking to today. We have tried different toppings, and
we've even done different crust methods. Like we've done stuffed crust by taking cheese and putting it in the crust end. We've even buttered the crust before, and though it is extremely tasty, it is very unhealthy for you. We can't really condone that lifestyle, but we're not afraid to live it sometimes.
That may be true. But, and this is something that you should make your own. You can take what we've set for you and go ahead and make it your own. That's what we've done for ourselves, is we've taken this basic recipe and we've changed it. We've made it our own. We've taken things from Dave's family, taken things from my family, and what we did when we were growing up, and we've kind of melted it into our lives, into our family that we're trying to create together.
Yeah. We've cooked to our taste, right? And if you cook to your taste, then it's always going to be good. It's like if you like, say, lots of meat on your pizza, like you put bacon, put sausage and pepperoni, or if you're like a vegetarian, then you can even go that way. You can put lots of vegetables on there and just cheese.
We've even put vegetables out of the garden, like we've put zucchini on pizza before.
Yeah, we've put fresh zucchini, And then there's some people who like pineapple on pizza, and so they might be wrong, but people like it.
I'm one of those people who likes pineapple. I like pepperoni too, but I like pineapple on pizza as well.
Seeing some people, and you have to
find a balance.
Yeah. So if she wanted a pineapple on the pizza, it's a pizza, a whole pizza. You can't split the pizza. You don't have to eat the whole thing.
Yeah, honey, you don't have to
eat the whole thing. But sometimes I do anyways, because I lose track of myself.
The first time we ever made this pizza was actually a really funny story. And it's evolved so much more from then. We're attempting stuffed crust pizza and we're doing so many different things. But the first time we ever made this pizza, it actually went pretty badly.
Yeah. We had been wanting to make pizza for a while, and so I called my mom up and I got the recipe from her. And we're like, great, we're gonna try it. Well, the day we planned to try it was also the day we ended up buying a couch and asking for help from Kyanne's parents to move the couch in. And we figured as a good way of paying them, quote unquote,
or thanking them for
thanking them
coming to help us move. I mean, they had to drive 2 hours just to get to us, which we were like, oh, thank you so much for doing this. Like, this is something that we could do to repay them, because parents don't take money from their kids.
No, parents don't.
Especially my parents. Like, they would be like, nope.
Yeah, they would blatantly refuse. And so we figured we could pay him back by cooking pizza for him, or cooking for him. And we were like, well, we have this recipe, so let's give it a try. So we started trying, and we did as we talked about earlier, throwing the recipe together. But we made a mistake. We asked, because I knew that pizza was about the consistency of the dough. And I was messing with it, trying to get the right consistency. And by doing so, I kept adding water and flour to try and get the right consistency instead of being like, okay, it's good, leave it alone. And I ended up adding too much flour and too much water. And so we just got this big old mound of dough, real thick, and it rose too.
Yeah, by the end, after we had mixed it and tried to knead it and put it on the pan, the dough was probably like 2 inches thick.
Yeah, it was a very thick, and even though like our pizza pan was 16 inches, it was pretty thick, and then also we made the mistake of having the oven at the wrong temperature.
We had it at like 300.
Yeah, like 325, when usually you cook pizza at like 425, 420, something like that. And it cooked too slow. It took forever. I think we clocked in at like 45 to an hour. That's how long it was in the oven.
If not
like
longer.
in total, if not longer. And a lot of that was due to the fact that we look at it and the toppings were done. The topping was done, and we looked at the very bottom, and the bottom was crisp, but like the inside of it, because it was so thick, the dough wasn't quite done. It was a little spongy in some spots.
It was doughy in some spots.
It was pretty nasty. It was actually pretty bad. I'm surprised that your parents...
I mean, once it was all cooked, it wasn't like the worst thing I've ever had in my entire life, but it wasn't like super enjoyable.
It was probably the worst pizza you'd had your entire life.
I don't even know if I would say it was the worst pizza I've had. I mean, I've had some pretty... Not like that pizza that your dad got us that was bad.
That's another story. That's an awful story.
Oh.
But it was a bad pizza. We kind of felt bad because that was our first time making it, and I don't think they'll ever let us make them pizza again.
I mean, we haven't yet. We haven't made them pizza. We really should be like,
they haven't
we've honed
asked.
this in. We've actually do good at this.
And I think actually if we started talking about it again, they'll probably just change the subject real quick. It's like, say, how about them Cougars? How about the Maggies? Anyways. But yeah, that's essentially the first time we really made pizza. And it's got its rough patches. And even now, we'll still mess up. Sometimes, like last time we did pizza, there was a few spots where the garlic salt was real thick.
See, and I didn't think so. I thought it was perfect. It tasted so great.
Well, because you didn't taste the meats. But, things happen, right? And you just got to pick yourself up and you got to keep making the pizza.
And essentially, what is pizza without the dough? And, that's essentially what this whole podcast is about. It's about the evolution of dough throughout history and the evolution of dough throughout our lives. How this recipe has become something that's so important to us. It's symbolic of how we want our marriage to be, and it's something that has really kind of brought us together, and we hope will continue to bring us together and continue to bring our family together, make it into a family event. Thank you for listening to this podcast, and I want to thank Dave for coming in and helping me out with this. Again, this is a family event. It's been special to us. So, yeah, thanks.
Thank you.